The Grandmaster Nightfall for this week is the Lightblade strike, arguably the hardest strike in the game. And I know we have things like Glassway, the Corrupted, but Lightblade has solidified itself, at least for me, as the hardest Nightfall in the game. With that being said, today we're going to be going over builds because yes, things have definitely changed since the first time we played this strike way back in Witch Queen. So first up, the build of choice is pretty much going to be the same for all Nightfalls, and it's our Lord of Thunder build. I'm taking advantage of Heart of Inmost Light, Elemental Ordnance mod, Bountiful Wells. I'm also using Lightning Strikes Twice, which is an artifact mod, as well as Amped Up, which allows me to stay amplified longer. We're also using Thunderclap Melee, Storm Grenades, which is the biggest selling point here, Touch of Thunder, Knockout, Spark of Magnitude, Amplitude, Resistance, and Shock, as well as a Thunder Crash Super, and of course our Thruster as our class ability, which has the fastest cooldown, and of course the maneuverability with it is really nice. Weapons of choice for this is actually an Arbalest and the Hothead. Hothead is so good, especially with Explosive Light in the boss room, as you can do maximum damage, and there are so many orbs that are dropping with each damage phase. I'm also taking advantage of this Insidious Adept. I don't know why I'm taking advantage of it. I know it deals arc damage. I'm mainly taking advantage of it because I have no use of this Adept weapon whatsoever, so why not? If you got the crafted roll, obviously that's the better choice. Now, Les is essentially rocking the same exact loadout that I'm rocking, and the Fizzer was actually rocking Invis Hunter with Omnioculus, which makes this Nightfall so much easier. Highly advising having one person on your team with Invis. You can easily traverse that Labyrinth Forest area. You can also easily traverse on those Hive ships and just go Invis over and over again. So again, one person on your team with Invis makes this Nightfall a lot easier. Now, I know in the past we might have taken advantage of more healing-based supers, things like Well of Radiance, or even protective supers like Ursa Furiosa. What we're really going for here is maximum offensive power. And these Storm Grenades with Touch of Thunder and Heart of Inmost Light do tremendous amounts of damage, especially in this Nightfall, given that we have Arc Burn. Now, speaking of modifiers, you'll be dealing with Barrier and Unstoppable champions this week. You have Acute Arc Burn, where you're dealing 25% more arc damage, but of course you receive 50% more arc damage. And we also have Shielded Foes. Arc is pretty much covered by everything that we're using. Solar Shields is really at the front when you're dealing with some wizards. Honestly, the Solar Shields are easily dealt with by Arbalest, so don't worry about rocking a solar-based weapon. With that being said, let's jump into this Nightfall and go over how to progress through this thing, because yes, you can actually do this Nightfall in 15 minutes or less if you know how to optimize it. Starting when you first fly in. Guys, deal with this boss, do some damage with him, drop a single Gallahorn shot. The Fizzer was actually rocking a galley. This allowed us to have Wolfpack rounds for our hotheads. Do some damage to him and he will immediately retreat, and then you can push all the way through. Now, you do actually have two champions in this room, but you don't have to deal with those two champions. You can just skip them. Now, you have options here. It seems that this Nightfall actually allows you to skip two champions, and you can skip them anywhere. You can skip them right here at the beginning, or you can skip them right there at the end. And for certain people, like Saul Greppo, he would actually skip the final two champions and just melt the boss in the last damage phase. We found this a little difficult to do simply because once these champions spawn in, they are very distracting and you can't really plan where the boss is going to be at when they spawn in. So we found that actually killing those champions, all the champions in the boss room, was really the way to go, and just skipping the two at the very beginning of the Nightfall. Now, that's kind of a preference thing, whichever one you want to do to secure your platinum run. We just found that to secure platinum for us more consistently, deal with the champions, all of them in the boss room, kill them all, and just skip the two in the very beginning of the Nightfall. Now, when you push on through, you'll be met with two solar wizards, pop an Arbalest shot on them, and down below, you're actually going to have two barrier champions and a Lightblade's warrior. Now, let me tell you something about this Lightblade warrior. Even if you kill the Lightblade warrior on the bottom level, for some reason, the game will bug out and put his ghost at the top. And again, if you don't finish the ghost, these Lightblade Lucent warriors will literally just self-rest, hence the power of the light. But deal with these champions and with that Lightblade warrior, and then you're going to have another warrior spawn up from where you came in. Now, even though this Nightfall has arc burn, guys, these Lucent broods, these warriors that are throwing these signal shields can still easily one-hit kill you. They can kill you with a single shield throw, which by the way has insane tracking. They can also kill you with a single suppressor grenade that's well placed. Needless to say, move the hell out of the way when they start throwing. Matter of fact, use your super or whatever else on them and just keep moving around this guy as you're dealing with him. Now, upon dealing with him and dealing with the rest of the ads in this room, in the middle, you're actually going to have Lightblade Disciple or Disciples that actually spawn with, of course, another warrior. The good thing about this is that they're actually spawning right on top of each other. So if you're proccing Heart of Inmost Light, and you should be with your melee and of course your class ability, this is amplifying your damage. Throw a single Storm Grenade in there and you'll be amazed how much damage it does to all of these guys staying together. And considering Les and I were both doing this, we were killing so many things with just a single grenade throw. Now, upon dealing with these guys and all of these ads, you'll push on through and you'll see the Temple of the Navigator, which is the Hive ship that you're going to actually actually be on top of. There's going to be 2 stairs, one to the left and one to the right, and a champion on either side. Deal with these champions and then proceed to jump on top of the ship. And then when you jump on the ship, you're going to have acolytes on these platforms to your right and left, as well as a shrieker that will spawn up in the middle. Now, granted, you can invis your way through this entire section, but killing that shrieker is advised, as when you get off of the ship at the end, that shrieker should still be able to reach you, and you don't want to have to deal with that while dealing with these other ads down here. Now, when you push all the way through, you'll have stairs on the left and the right side, and at the top of these stairs, you'll have another Lightblade's warrior. My only suggestion on this, guys, if you're soloing a side by yourself, just use your super in combination with one of your grenades. Like, throw your grenade, then pop your super. Les was actually doing that on his side, which was allowing him to pretty much solo that warrior every single time. Now, after you do that, you have to pick up the charges and then deposit them down below, and then you're back on the hive ship. Now, this is where invis is so beneficial. In the past, we used to have to jump off each platform, deal with these ads. This wasted a lot of time. But considering we're going right under these ads, the Fizzo here with Gambler's Dodge was able to constantly apply invis back to back, and this made life so easy. We essentially were able to just skip all of this. Didn't even have to kill the shriekers. Just make sure the loadout for invisibility is constantly being applied, and you guys are good. Once you push all the way through, you're gonna have a section here where thrall are coming out of the walls or these doorways and just jumping on the ship. We advise actually stepping off and just throw a single storm grenade out on the ship. Les and I were actually staggering our grenade throws, and they were killing every thrall that was actually popping down. It was a beautiful sight to behold. Now, moving into the next area. This is an area that can definitely get you in trouble, and is actually traversing this swamp with, of course, these lamps that takes away weight of darkness. Now, as you go through the swamp, you'll gain more and more weight, where your body literally starts to get weighed down, and at times 10, you can't even run anymore. I tried going amplified and just speed running through this thing, and you're just not fast enough, and your team normally dies because they can't keep up. We found just going invisible and progressing through the swamp, slow but methodical, lamp to lamp, was the best way. And by the way, you want to run through each one of these gates, which will then carry you to the next lamp. I know there is a cheese way somebody even brought up. You can just go to the right. Guys, this is really not hard to do, especially if you're taking advantage of invis and you're taking advantage of these storm grenades. Throw them out there with these group of enemies, pop these moths, go invisible, and you're good, man. And just keep pushing all the way through. And we had a number of runs there toward the end where we successfully got through this swamp every single time, our entire team alive, and we're able to make it into this next section. Now, moving into this next section, you have an unstoppable abomination down low with a number of scorn that start to rush you. Deal with these guys, and when you pop up, you'll have more scorn. And look how beautiful these storm grenades are, man. Just throw one out there, proc Heart of Immus Light, and it literally does all the work for you. Now, when you actually peek over this cliffside, you don't want to jump down because there is a ginormous battle going down below, which includes some unstoppables, some scorn, some ogres. Yeah, it's pretty wild. You also have 2 shriekers there on the left. There really is no flow chart on what to deal with first. Sometimes the shriekers will immediately open and you can just shred them down. Other times they don't. Regardless though, deal with all these guys, these champions, deal with the shriekers, push the light bearer out, and then you're going to proceed into the boss room. Now, this is definitely the room that will actually start you over in this Nightfall so many times if you're not careful. When this boss actually opens up, he drops down, but as he's dropping down, a number of orbs drops down. And this actually happens in every single damage phase, or when he actually goes into his immunity back into damage. This is fantastic for you because you can top off your super. The problem is the orbs are surrounded by a ton of cursed thrall on the bottom level. And then on his level, of course, he's there, so he can immediately wreck you. So don't go out there and risk your life for these orbs. Just when he jumps to either side and he's away from that middle section, then of course you can go out there and grab those orbs. And I would say as a Titan with Thruster, it is a lot easier to evade these cursed thralls, right? And a single storm grenade with this tracking capability does a fantastic job of cleaning up these guys down low. Now, the first damage phase is just going to consist of the first third of his health. Once you get him to 2/3, he will teleport right back to the middle, and he's actually going to drop 2 disciples and a Lightblade's warrior in the middle. The Fizzo would actually drop a tether right there in the middle to get a debuff off. I would pop a super right in the mix of things, primarily though on the warrior, as that is the most dangerous thing on the field right now. Deal with that warrior, get a finish off on the ghost, and then proceed to deal with those disciples, and then the boss can start being damaged again. Simultaneously though, as soon as the boss can start being damaged, he will spawn in 2 barrier champions. One on the left, one on the right. They can be hell to deal with. This is where storm grenades are really clutch. Deal with those guys, proceed to do more damage to the Lightblade, and after you get him to half health, he will spawn 2 more champions yet again, which will be 2 barrier champions. Now, at any point where things get too hectic, always feel free to just break away and gather yourself, but don't stop moving. Throughout this entire process, the Lightblade is literally unloading tons of arc damage that will go around columns, that will go through walls, that will shred you, and there's nothing you can do about it. On top of that, if he gets too close to you, he's just gonna smash you with his axe. Needless to say, you don't want to quit moving in this Nightfall, guys. Constantly be moving. moving. Upon getting him to the final third of his health, he'll spawn 2 more disciples and a Lightblade's warrior in the middle, and essentially the same process you did earlier. And I will say, even though we are using our super here, you don't have to. If you got somebody on your team with Aeon Gauntlets, say for instance the Invis Hunter, and they're constantly providing you heavy ammo, by all means guys, unload your hotheads on that warrior right there in the middle, including the disciples, and you'll easily shred this guy down. Now upon killing these guys, halfway through the third of this bar, 2 more champions will appear. Now this is where I mentioned earlier, if you didn't skip the 2 champions at the beginning of the Nightfall, you can skip these guys. My experience though, because we did skip the 2 champions in the beginning, when we tried to skip these champions, the game gave us gold instead of platinum. So keep that in mind. Yes, you can shred the Lightblade here in that final damage phase and shoot past everything, but at the same time, it's easier when he's not on the same side when the barrier champions spawn. If he's walking around where the barrier champions are going to spawn, that right there, man, puts you in a big bind because you run into a situation where you have to deal with those barrier champions before you can deal with the boss. They're just too dangerous. So long story short, choose which 2 champions you don't want to deal with. We found it easier just to skip the beginning, but completely up to you. The Lightblade is a very difficult Nightfall, but we were actually able to get this thing down to 15-minute runs. And what's dropping from this Nightfall this week is of course the Mindbender's Ambition as an Adept version. And we're very excited to try this weapon out, guys. We're going to be reviewing it inside of Crucible and inside of PvE. It can roll things like Incandescent. It's got very good stats. And of course, being an Adept weapon, you get to top off your other stats. You can of course roll things like Vanguard's Vindication. I will be testing this shotgun extensively, including kill ranges. And of course, the most immediate comparison that this shotgun's going to have is the time loss found verdict and maybe fell winners. We're going to be doing some comparisons though. We're going to be talking about the shotgun. I did use it earlier in Crucible and I was very impressed with it. Despite its reviews being as bad as they are in Light GG, I think Mindbender's has a place. So be looking out for that. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.